the other thing is that we will disable chat option. So the idea is that in the first part we will talk a lot, but then we will have like open discussion with all of you. So we will try to explain you some things, some issues that we noticed, or maybe they were obvious, and you also noticed them. And then later on we'll have time to exchange all together. Okay, so coming back to the objectives of the workshop. So the general objective is that we really want to initiate the discussion on the role of the Interreg in a wider context of the cohesion policy. So basically speaking, what Interreg should be, or how we should perceive Interreg as a community and as a group of people. As I said, it's a very general thing. We don't want to convince anyone or to tell you that you should think that way. It's like a debate. We want to debate with you about it. So that is our general objective, and then we have two specific objectives. So one specific objective would be to consider how the piloting philosophy could be applied, or is applied actually in Interreg. We will explain you what it means and how we understand this piloting philosophy. This is first objective, and the second is if Interreg is about and having this piloting philosophy, how it could play together with P-BA concept, and how P-BA can be, how both approaches can somehow affect each other or can work together. So they are like, so this is what we are going to try to achieve during this 1.5 hours today. But a bit also about general expectations. So what you can expect. So just to repeat myself, we will try to cover this piloting philosophy in Interreg. What is it? What are the challenges and benefits, and how this piloting philosophy could be impacted by the P-BA concept. But what is more importantly, what we will not cover. We will not cover anything. We will not explain you P-BA because it's not a P-BA training. So we will not have any discussion on P-BA, how it goes on upper, lower level, what are examples, what are specific topics and everything. So we will not talk specifically about P-BA. We assume that many of you already know at least some general issues about it, but of course we want to connect it to the piloting aspects. Yes, and then let's see, our detailed agenda. I already mentioned you a few things. So for the first 40-45 minutes, we will talk about this piloting, what it means, how it's compatible with the P-BA and so on. Then we will have a short polling exercise together with you. And the last time we will dedicate to the plenary discussion and wrap up of the session. So this will be the moment for the exchanges, and we would like to hear from you at that point. Okay, anything else I should mention here, guys?
Nothing from my side.
No, I think
that's clear. Okay, I see people are still joining. I hope Jon and Phil, you have an eye on that, and thanks a lot. So let's then move quickly to
we're about 75 now, Robert, so we can.
Okay, so we are we reached our target. Perfect. So I have a question to all of you, and this will be a first maybe a bit of warm-up question. So, is a failure always a bad thing? And we would like to hear from you. What do you think about it? Is it failure always a bad thing in any context? Jon, can you then start the poll?
The poll is started.
Yes, I cannot see it. Should I stop sharing then?
I think we can see it, Robert, but if you want to see it yourself, then maybe you can stop sharing.
Okay. So then I will stop sharing. Okay, now I can see, because
Yeah.
I also wanted to vote. Let's see. Okay, I voted.
Yep.
We have interesting results. No one said yes. Wow, that's so interesting. And 80% of people said no. So the failure is not always a bad thing. 20% people said sometimes, maybe might be a bad thing, but not always. Okay, very interesting. But just to also put a bit of icebreaker, let's see what former basketball legend has to say about a failure. And I will share my screen then. Okay, not to focus. So let's see. Can you see my screen? Yes, I can see. Okay, so let's see what Michael Jordan has to say about a failure.
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed.
So even Michael Jordan failed over and over in his life, and he's recognized as a GOAT, greatest of all time in basketball. But he admitted that he failed so much time. So I think he's very much in line with what the results of the poll was, that failure is not a bad thing if you can learn from it, or you can proceed. So I will now give floor to Phil, who will later on explain more on the we called P's. Phil, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. So I think you can all see my slide now, right? So
yes,
yeah, I think always a good start to a meeting when you find out that Michael Jordan agrees with you. So that's already a good outcome for today. And we'll be coming back to this topic of failure later. But maybe just one thing to mention before we begin this presentation. So we're aware that some of you weren't able to access the poll, and yeah, we're sorry about this. It's actually an issue on your side and not on ours. But as we will be using polls later on, just to apologize for that. And if you can't vote using the poll, then please answer the question in your mind. We'd still like you to think about these questions that we're asking you. But yeah, but now onto the two P's. So we're going to be talking about two P's today. So one of them is pilots and the other is P-BA. But first, let's focus on the P, which is the piloting philosophy. So we're aware that the word pilots is used a lot in Interreg, so it's a word that you'll be familiar with, but because of that reason, this may result in the fact that lots of people have got a slightly different idea of what piloting means, and because we will be we want to talk about something very specific when we're talking about piloting today. That's why we wanted to spend a bit of time on how we have chosen to define it. So What is piloting? It is small, strategic experiments. And when we say small, this is a relative term, and maybe we will also come back to this later on. But yeah, small strategic experiments which apply theoretical knowledge to real world situations to see whether what works in theory also works in practice. And if that's what the what is, then what is the goal of if that is the goal, if that is the what, then what is the goal? Then yes, it's to find out what works in practice and in which contexts, and so that theoretical knowledge that is shown to work in practice can be taken up and used. So there's always a very practical outcome hoped for at the end of a pilot, which is that these new practices that have been tested are taken up and used. So one thing to so just before just while we're still on the definition, I think it's worth just spending a bit of time on a couple of these words here. So you see on the what in the second bubble, it says applying theoretical knowledge. So this is it's very important that we make the point that the piloting philosophy is not about generating theoretical knowledge. This is what funds like Horizon do. They generate the theoretical knowledge, whereas the piloting approach, it's about taking that theoretical knowledge that has been generated in Horizon and other funds that are more on this theoretical fundamental level, and about seeing if those things that work in theory also work in practice. So that's something that we want, a point that we want to make very clearly at the beginning, that when we're talking about pilots, we're not talking about things like Horizon. And another point that we want to make at this early stage is that, well, I think a lot of you, when you see our definition of piloting, you might say, well, this is just a description of innovation and how innovation works. And if you were to say that to me, I would agree with you. I would say, yes, this also describes my understanding of how innovation works. However, the reason why it was a deliberate choice on our side not to mention the word innovation at this point, because we are aware that for some people, when you say the word innovation, they automatically think of research and innovation. And for us, we're very clear that piloting can apply to all themes, all fields, and this is because piloting is basically about making any practice or process more efficient and effective through experimentation and learning. So this is our definition of the piloting philosophy. So let's now look at some examples. So again, a short disclaimer here before we present our fictional example. So the clue is in the name. It is a fictional example. We're not going for realism here. So please, if you know a lot about cleaning of seawater, please don't get fixated on the fact that maybe this is is too general or whatever. We have chosen examples that are deliberately simple in order to help to make the point that we want to make. So that is a disclaimer here. So, okay, so now to our example. So your program includes a sea. The sea is the border between several different countries, and this sea is very polluted. And your program has only a limited amount of money to spend on cleaning it. So you run a call for projects to help you to deal with this challenge that you have in your program area, and 2 projects apply. So let's have a look at those projects. So the first project to apply is Project A. And let's have a look at Project A. So its budget is 5 million euros. It has a goal to clean as much water as possible during the project lifetime. And it's the outcome of the project. So the outcome that the project promises to deliver is that at the end of the project, 10 cubic kilometers of water will be cleaned. So this is Project A. And the second project that applies is Project B. So let's have a look at Project B. So in some respects, it is similar. So it also has a budget of 5 million. But this time the goal of the project is to trial different methods for cleaning water to see which is most cost effective. So the goal is slightly different between Project A and Project B. So the Project B has 2 known outcomes. So the first is that 0.5 cubic kilometers of water will be cleaned. So we can see that in terms of the amount of water that will be cleaned during the project lifetime, Project B's is quite a lot smaller. But this is because this isn't actually the main intended outcome of this project. This is actually just a side effect. When you're testing the different methods, you will inevitably clean some water while you're testing them. So this isn't the main outcome. This is just a side effect of those testing, because the main intended outcome is to generate knowledge about which of the methods that work in theory, which of these work best in practice, so which of these are most cost effective. And Project B has an additional outcome to Project A, which is a potential outcome. So Project B has a potential outcome that a very, very large amount of cubic kilometers could be cleaned. But these would be financed by other funding sources, and these potential outcomes would only be realized quite a lot longer after the project ends. So we see with the 2 projects that have applied, there are 2 quite clear differences. And we can maybe summarize these differences in this way. So Project A leads to impact which is immediate, known, but quite limited. 100 cubic kilometers is a lot more than 0.1 cubic kilometer, which is what the pilot project was known to deliver, but it's still quite modest. But at least it's known, and it will happen during the project lifetime. Whereas Project B, the impact it's not immediate. It would happen quite a long time after the program and the projects are finished. It's not certain. It is dependent on quite a few factors. So whether the pilots are successful or not, whether further funding can be found after the project and the program in order to fund the take-up of these pilots. But even though it's only potential impact, that potential impact is much, much greater. It's a lot greater. So, yeah, so this is, these are the two, and you see here that project A, we are saying represents an approach which could be categorized as the delivery approach or philosophy, whereas project B is more aligned with this piloting philosophy that we defined at the beginning. And because it's the piloting philosophy that we are particularly interested in discussing today, we're now going to focus on this for the next few slides, starting first of all with some of the challenges of the piloting philosophy. So, one of the challenges of the piloting philosophy is that the real impact is hard to measure. So, if we think about project B that we just saw in the previous slides, okay, there is some aspect of that project which is quite easy to measure, whether that 0.5 cubic kilometers was delivered. But as we've said, that's not what the main goal of the project was. That's just a side effect. So actually, we're not so interested in measuring that. What this project is really intending to generate is knowledge about which method works best, why, and in which circumstances. And because this outcome is knowledge, it is by definition, well, it's knowledge, so it's not tangible, which means by definition it is harder to measure. Secondly, this knowledge is not of particular value in itself. It is only valuable if it is disseminated and applied, which often only happens after the project and the program have ended. So ultimately, the true value of the project, so whether 1,000 cubic kilometers of water was cleaned 5 years, 6 years after the project, this may never be known or recorded by the program. So this is clearly a challenge in terms of measuring the real impact. And maybe a question for you at this point is to think about, so how many Interreg projects have led to amazing results, but the credit went to the person who cut the ribbon 10 years after the projects were completed, so the credit went to that person rather than to the Interreg project that made it all happen 10 years earlier. I suppose we will never know how many of projects like this have existed. And yeah, this is another challenge in terms of measuring. So just to continue on this measurement point, so yes, we do have impact evaluations which attempt to capture this information. And I know that Danny and Bastiana are on this call, and this clearly shows the importance of impact evaluations to try to capture this this intangible impact. But even then, there is a challenge because impact evaluations often also correspond to the programming period in question. So it's hard for them to capture impacts which don't happen in that programming period and which happen after, which, as we've seen, are the types of impacts that the piloting projects have. And another challenge is that, yeah, we have limited budget for impact evaluations, so they often take place at the program level. They don't happen at the project level, which means that even just from a point of view of resources, the impacts of each individual piloting project may be beyond what is possible from an impact evaluation. And then even if the impact evaluation is able to measure the contribution of this piloting project to this long-term impact, that information is often buried deep within a 100 or 200 page very technical evaluation report, which leads us to our next challenge, which is that the value of the piloting philosophy is often hard to communicate. So just to go back to projects A and B. So if I tell my program, if I'm a program manager and I tell my program stakeholders, our program has cleaned 10 cubic kilometers of polluted seawater, everyone understands that. Just with that sentence, they understand what my program has delivered. But if I tell my program stakeholders that my program has delivered 1 pilot or 10 pilots, this, well, to me at least, sounds quite vague. Unless I have additional context, that we're looking for the most cost-effective methods for cleaning seawater, then yeah, that doesn't really say anything to me about the value of the pilots. And of course, as we all know, that the more information and context that we provide in order to explain what we do, the more likely people are to turn off and stop listening, because yeah, it's hard to have a clear message when you're needing to provide additional detail. And then, even if people have and understand the context about these pilots, then a lot of people will ask, were these pilots successful? And they will only judge the value of these pilots on whether or not they were successful, whether they led to something, whether the knowledge that they generated was picked up. And as we've just seen in our measurements green block, for all of the reasons described previously, this is hard to know, at least within the programming period. So for these reasons, we, at least Jon, Robert, and I, we see that there are challenges for communicating the piloting philosophy. And now let's turn to the third challenge, which is that the piloting philosophy requires planning and coordination. So yeah, I used to work for a program, and when I worked for the program, I used to often hear the phrase "only pilots." So only pilots. You know, you're only doing pilots. Why don't you ever deliver something? But as we've seen in projects A and B, this idea of only pilots is false, because it's not only pilots, because the pilots actually have the potential to deliver a massively greater amount of benefits than the delivery projects. However, it is true that a pilot is only a pilot if the knowledge that they generate isn't transferred and used, and this requires planning and coordination. This isn't impossible, and I prepared this slide here of so we can see here that there are things that programs can do in order to make sure that these aren't only pilots, that the lessons that they generate are shared and used. So at application stage, you can ask the question, is there a demand for the project knowledge? So for example, if there is a group of people just waiting to know what is the best methods to clean the sea, and they are eagerly anticipating the outcomes of these pilots in order to know which is the best method to help clean the sea, then there is a more chance that these will be taken up and used, because we know that there are people out there that want to know these results. So that's one thing we can do. The second thing is actually involve them in the project. I know this is a feature of many Interreg projects, is having an internal steering group in the project, so that those people who plan or wish to use the results of the projects, if they're actually in the project, observing the pilots, so that they are really testing the things and providing them in the format that will make it easier for those you could call them end user organizations to take up and use. If they're actively involved in the project, then this makes it more likely that those results will be taken up. Another thing that we can do to make the results of our pilots more likely to be taken up and used is to do the pilots in as diverse a range of locations as possible, because this will increase it will mean that the results will be applicable to a wider range of organizations. And that means that we're not just limiting the results of these pilots to a small group of potential end users. And finally, well, not finally, this is just 4 things, but there are many other things that I'm sure you are doing out there to increase the chance that your pilot results will be used. Is you can already ask at application stage for a dissemination plan. So even if the dissemination, much of it will happen after the project is over, what is the project going to do during the project lifetime in order to set up the structure that will make that dissemination happen? And if the rollout of these pilots will be funded by alternative funding sources, if these are already identified in the application stage, then this also gives greater assurance that any successful pilots will be taken up and used. So there are many things that programs can do in order to increase the chance that pilots' results will be used, but these things all require planning and coordination in advance. So if you forget to do these at the beginning, then you're playing catch up. And just in general, it just adds a greater layer of complexity compared to projects that their focus is only on delivering results. So, in conclusion, to the challenges of the piloting philosophy, yeah, so I think for all of these reasons here, that the real impact is hard to measure, value is harder to communicate, and piloting philosophy requires planning and coordination. This, from my personal experience, and we will be asking you later whether this also aligns with your experience, but in my personal experience, this has led to a reputational challenge for the piloting philosophy. Due to all of these reasons, they're hard to measure, hard to communicate, they're more complex. Piloting can have an image problem. There can be a perception that the piloting philosophy leads to vague, intangible projects that lack impact, which, as Project B illustrates, at least that what we try to illustrate with Project B, this is a myth, because the piloting philosophy has the potential to deliver very high level of very tangible and very large impacts. But for these reasons we've explained, people often aren't aware of this, and that there is this image problem of the piloting philosophy. And this is a shame, at least in Robert, Jon, and my opinion, and we will see whether it's also in your opinion later, because we see the piloting philosophy as having a lot of benefits. and not only benefits, but benefits specific to Interreg. And the reason why they're specific to Interreg is because we see the piloting philosophy as turning many of Interreg's weaknesses or perceived weaknesses into strengths. So let's take the first potential weakness or perceived weakness of Interreg. And this is that Interreg programs often have large and diverse program areas. And this is not just transnational programs and interregional programs, but also there are also many cross-border programs who are characterized by large program areas that are often separated by large natural obstacles like seas and mountain ranges. And with the budgets that Interreg programs have at their disposal, there is, our budget in comparison to these large and complex program areas is comparatively small. And this can be a weakness if you're trying to deliver delivery projects. So let's think about Project A. So this is the project that is trying to clean 10 cubic kilometers of seawater. So if that Project A, focuses its attention on trying to clean 10 kilometers in a single river estuary, this will benefit. This will bring maybe quite a high benefit, but just to that single estuary, that small corner of the program area. Or if it tries to clean 1 kilometer, 1 cubic kilometer across various areas of the program area, then this 1 cubic kilometer may be so small that its impact is hardly felt at all across the program area. So faced with this situation of large complex program area, a relatively small budget, if you're trying to deliver, you can either create a high impact but only felt in a very small area, or you can, or there's a risk that you, in trying to deliver for everyone, that you spread yourself so thinly that you're hardly felt at all. But this isn't the case if your project is generating knowledge, which, as we've said, is the goal of piloting projects. Knowledge is intangible, but that very intangibility means that, provided that it is disseminated effectively throughout the whole program area, then there is no spatial limitation to how many people can benefit and take and apply this knowledge. So this is the first way that we see that the piloting philosophy actually turns one of Interreg's weaknesses into a strength. There's another perceived or potential weakness of Interreg, which is that Interreg projects are often characterized by partnerships of organizations with very diverse administrative, cultural, and linguistic contexts. And not only that, but most of our Interreg, a hallmark of Interreg projects is that they also are composed of multi-level partnerships involving local authorities, research institutions, NGOs, and increasingly the private sector. So you've got horizontal complexity in terms of organizations from different regions, different national contexts, but you've also got this horizontal complexities, lots of different types of organizations who maybe aren't used to cooperating with each other. And this complexity, if you're just trying to deliver, if you're just trying to apply known knowledge in order to deliver something simple, straightforward, tangible, immediate, then this complexity has the potential to hold you back and may cause you to deliver this in a less efficient way. However, if in the context of pilots, this same horizontal and vertical diversity can be an enormous strength, because it has the potential to enrich your pilots with a greater source of inputs, greater cross-fertilization of ideas. And then also from the dissemination and knowledge transfer perspective is these partnerships composed of lots of different of organizations from different spatial and vertical contexts. This can help your knowledge and your lessons to transcend national and sectoral boundaries. So yeah, so this complexity in the context of pilots can enrich the development of the pilots, and then it can help the results go further. So I will shortly be handing over to my colleague Jon now, but just to kind of summarize where we've got to at this stage. So we have defined the pilot philosophy, which is that the pilot philosophy applies theoretical knowledge to see if it works in practice. We've seen how the piloting philosophy is different from the delivery philosophy. We have seen some of the challenges of the piloting philosophy, that its true impact is harder to measure, harder to communicate, and require more coordination and planning, leading sometimes to an image problem. But we have also seen that there are many benefits of the piloting philosophy, and moreover, these benefits can help turn some of Interreg's weaknesses into strengths. But there are further consequences of adopting the piloting philosophy, and to talk you through those is my colleague, Jon.
Right. Thank you, Phil. So I'm mindful now that we are running out of time, so I'll try to make it quick as possible. So the most obvious consequence of the piloting philosophy is that some of your pilots will inevitably fail. And this is something that we all must accept, although this can be sometimes quite difficult to explain to our sort of political masters, because by definition, almost, the result of any pilot is unknown, since you're doing something which has not been tried before. You're applying theoretical knowledge into practice, which means that the results will be unpredictable, since you don't know them in advance. At least in that context. Although of course some pilots have been tried in other contexts, but you don't know how it's going to work in another context. So this is an inevitability. The thing is, we just have to find a balance, right? So obviously, if you think about it on a scale, you don't want to be at either extreme. So, obviously, if your pilots are never fail, actually, then it means that you're not doing piloting at all. It means that you are delivering known solutions, because if you do, by definition, as I said, you're going somewhere unknown, you don't know what's going to happen. So it's inevitable that something will not turn out as expected. However, if all your pilots fail, then you're not being very strategic. And remember, the definition we used for pilots is that pilots are strategic experiments, meaning that they are essentially educated strategic decisions. You don't do whatever you want. You need to do with a very justifiable reason. So pilots should all have some probability of succeeding. So if all of them are failing, that means that you're not being strategic or not doing things as it should be. So this is the biggest thing that as a consequence of the piloting philosophy, and Phil already mentioned reputational sort of concerns that people have. So this is the big one, that some of the pilots will fail, and that's inevitable, and we have to accept that. So how do we fail in the right way? As we remember from Michael Jordan, there is just because you failed, and as we already said from the poll, it's not always a bad thing. So, however, there are some things you can fail the wrong way, you can fail the right way. So in the right way, given that some of your pilots will fail, obviously you should not give them a very large budget, because if that money is lost, it will cause financial pain. So you only fund them, if you do them correctly, if you're failing right, you fund them with money that you are prepared to lose. So this is a thing which is very difficult to wrap your hand around. But if you think about it from like an investment point of view, so typical smart investment strategy is to have most of your money would be invested in very safe assets, so bonds, index funds, so on, etc., which have known predictable returns, which you can rely on. However, if you only do that, you will not grow your investments very much. What you need to do, or you should do, is you set aside some amount of money, however much you're comfortable with. And the key thing is money that which you're prepared to lose, and you use that on more speculative investments. So, for example, investing in a single stock, for example, rather than an index fund, which is much, much riskier. However, the potential benefits are much greater. So as long as you do not put all your eggs in one basket, especially on something risky like a pilot, and you only use money which you are prepared to lose, then everything, as long as you understand and accept that it's possible that you will lose this money, then that's okay. Then you're failing in the right way. And this is another area of which could turn Interreg's potential weakness into a strength, because Interreg, both as a fund in general, has a very small budget compared to the rest of the cohesion policy. We only represent, I think, around 2.3% of the total budget. And also within the individual programs, our budgets compared to our program areas. So this, obviously, if we're competing with the mainstream programs or so on, and we're doing delivery style projects, this would be a weakness. However, for pilots, as long as we can put some money aside for that, then that could be a strength, because another thing, anything with a large budget should never be a pilot, right? Because there's another consequence if you're funding big projects, and if they fail, then the consequences are obviously much more severe. So that's one way to do it. The other way is you fund diverse pilots, many diverse pilots rather than a few pilots in the same sort of area, because this will spread the risk. Obviously, this is the same idea. If you think about it like an investment, the same idea applies. Obviously, you diversify your investments, some of which will fail, and if the more you spread the risk, the better. Okay, so we'll try to go through this quickly. And finally, if you learn the lessons from your failed pilots, as Michael Jordan said, you haven't actually failed at all, because failing in terms of piloting philosophy is not just an inevitability. It's also a benefit if it's harnessed correctly, because if you, sorry, I need to go back. So, yeah. So if you learn the lessons from your failed pilots, then you have increased knowledge about what doesn't work. And this is also an extraordinarily important aspect, which is very often overlooked for obvious reasons, right? So, but you can think of it like, who was it? Thomas Edison, who said that because when he was inventing the light bulb, he failed many times. I think it was over 1,000 times. And when asked about it, he said that he didn't fail 1,000 times. He found 1,000 ways of not making a light bulb, which is actually very important because if you think of a pilot, if, for example, you try a different method, as in a smaller project, and it doesn't work, then that's very useful because that also prevents others from doing it. As long as you learn the lessons, as long as the lessons are disseminated, as Phil was mentioning earlier, this is the key thing. So if you fail, failure is bad, actually, if it's not learned from. If you fail and nobody learns from it, then someone else will try to do the same, and they will also fail, in which case it's just a waste of resources. Another way you can think about it, and this is, as Phil already mentioned, even successful pilots are very difficult to measure, but unsuccessful pilots are even more difficult because then we're dealing with counterfactuals. So, for example, because you discovered that this particular method doesn't work, then because you discovered it and you shared that knowledge and people now understand that this method doesn't work or is not as effective as another method, then you could save a lot of money, for example, by people who didn't use that method, who otherwise would have if you hadn't tested it first. Of course, this impact is very, 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 very difficult to measure, but it's nonetheless real. But just because something is not measurable, it doesn't mean it's not real. As Phil mentioned earlier, the thing about pilots is that they are not nearly as concerned with the tangible results. They're more concerned with the intangible. And the problem with the intangible things is that they are much more difficult to measure. Okay, so again, mindful of the time. So now it's finally time to talk about P-BA. So apologies for people who have been waiting. But now, and also when we talk about P-BA, we're only talking about P-BA in a very, very, very generic, broad sense. As Robert already mentioned in the beginning, this is not a training on P-BA. This is just, this is mostly focused on the philosophy of Interreg and the piloting philosophy and how it can fit. So, but now our question, the reason why we were thinking along these lines is that, so we're thinking about P-BA, obviously everybody's thinking about P-BA, and we're thinking, how does that fit with the piloting philosophy? So first of all, P-BA, what is it? On the very, very, very biggest, broadest possible definition, you can think of it as a system of reimbursements, delivery mechanism, which will be used in the next programming period, where payments are linked to meeting pre-agreed conditions with predefined monetary value. So what does that mean? So our thinking is that potentially this P-BA will favor projects whose outcome and design is known in advance, which obviously is more problematic, which could be problematic with pilots. So because payments are linked to predefined conditions with predefined monetary value, it means that talking about the programs define these conditions and these values ex ante. So you need to do it beforehand. So because of pilots, by their nature, as we already said, they are much more uncertain. The conditions and the monetary value of pilots are much more difficult to know in advance, unlike for delivery style projects with known solutions and known methods. So when you're determining the monetary value ex ante, it's more challenging to do that for pilots, which will be, as we always said, ideally many and diverse. And just by their nature. We also, the thing about the piloting philosophy is that we don't want to tell people the solution. Rather, we are sort of describing a problem, and then we are inviting the beneficiaries to come up with solutions. So, and then you assessed based on the evidence which one of those potential solutions is most likely to give the results you want. And so, because you're giving the idea behind the pilots, you're giving people freedom and flexibility. You will only really know the total budget of your pilot, the cash flow of your pilots, and the milestones and so on when they submit their proposal. So this makes it potentially more challenging. So in other words, so if you don't know what you're buying exactly, how can you know what is a fair price for it? So, however, a disclaimer. So this is an important thing. So we are not saying that pilots and P-BA are incompatible. Rather, our thinking is that there is a danger that the programs will sort of automatically drift towards delivery style projects only, just sort of by default, because this could be the path of sort of least resistance, right? So this is since you're determining ex ante your values and conditions, then it's very tempting to look towards known solutions when you're doing that. And we are thinking that because of this, it may require a more conscious effort from programs. Now, this is the reason why we're talking about it now, is because this is almost upon us, and the programming will start soon. Now, we think it would require a more conscious effort to adapt P-BA to their piloting philosophy, sort of if they have them, if they agree. So, so this is our conclusion. Again, it's not saying they were not saying P-BA pilot philosophy are incompatible, but we're saying it's potentially more challenging, and it requires a conscious effort on your behalf to preserve it. And that's it from our side.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you very much, Jon. But I think it's not over yet, because with this almost 1 hour, we thought it would be shorter, but things are as they are. We still have some questions to you, because I promised you that actually we will provide you with some fruits for thought. But now we would like to hear from you a bit. How do you see this? How do you perceive? As I said, this is more a debate. We are just throwing this into the air, and we would like to hear from you, and what do you think about it, and so on. So Jon, maybe if we can start with some polls.
Poll. So yes, on the scale below, what do I perceive as the percentage of my program that is spent on piloting currently? That is.
It's just a perception. How do you perceive your program?
Obviously, it doesn't have to be accurate, but it's just sort of based on, like you said, perception. Interesting.
Okay, so we have first results, 35 people. Let's maybe wait. 39. 43. So almost half of, a bit more than half of participants. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So majority, more than 40%, picked, perceived the current approach as less than 20% of piloting. The other is up to 40%, and of course, the rest, as you can see.
So majority is less than 40%.
Yep. So
Well,
60.
you could look at it the other way, that there is a third of participants who at least have more than 50% of their program, at least have more than 40% of their program related to pilots. So there are.
Of course, you can always look on the bright side. Okay, thanks for that. We have another question, because that was, how do you perceive? And now the question actually is, to which extent you would like the next program period, your program in the next programming period would implement this piloting. So what is your wish, expectation?
And this is without taking into account P-BA. It's just in terms of a philosophy.
Exactly.
What would your desired amount of your program related to piloting in the next programming period, if all things were possible?
Okay, 48. Three more, five more. The conclusion actually is pretty visible. There is a change. There is a change.
Yes.
It's not extreme change that suddenly all pilots and so on, but definitely it's a change. It's a direction. But many of you would maybe invest, as Jon said, slightly more into this piloting approach than the regular delivery project. Of course, not everything, but slightly more. Okay, thanks Jon for that. Do we have? I think we have one more.
Yes.
Well, no, this one is now an open question, so not a
Okay.
poll. Yeah, so maybe we save that poll for later, Jon.
Okay, can I?
So please don't vote on this one.
Okay.
Yep. I think you can.
Okay. I think I can. Did I stop it? No.
So actually, now we are in the. This is the open floor, open discussion, and we didn't plan this in any very structured way. We would like to hear from you. So anyone who wants to speak, please raise your hand and have a say and tell us, what do you think about it? Anything, any comment, any. As I said, it's a debate.
We're conscious that there are 80 people on the call, so that's maybe slightly intimidating for some people, but we're all friends here, and yeah, you've been hearing from us for the last hour, so it would be, have we said anything that you like? Did what we say? Did you know that already? Is there anyone who really disagrees with what we've said? I did notice that there was one person who voted that there was over 80% of their program is currently devoted to pilot. So if that person is brave enough, it would be really interesting to hear from them, to see if the way we have characterized the piloting philosophy is reflected in the way that program delivers their projects. So yeah, please, it would be really lovely if at least a few of you raised your hands and gave us some feedback. Yeah, I'm gonna really push it. I'm gonna take silence that everyone here agrees with everything that Jon, Robert, and I have said. Okay, right. We've got a reaction. So
yeah. So, Jacqueline, please, if you can unmute yourself, and then.
Yeah, hello, just to get this discussion started.
Thank you.
I think somebody always has to start. I'm part of the Interreg B North Sea program, and I'm also part of an actual project that we are doing, and we have 4 pilots in different regions of the North Sea. And I can actually fully agree with what you have been saying, but also we can see it is really difficult to because on the one hand the project wants us to deliver outputs, so kind of the pilot is supposed to be delivering, but on the other hand we are of course also to be capitalization, do this capitalization, so that the everything, the knowledge carries on after the project. So this is the kind of the difficulty that we are kind of seeing in delivering indicators and whatever. So this was just feedback from actual project. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, so actually you reconfirmed what exactly we were saying, all those challenges and so on. And yes, we call it a philosophical discussion because we wanted, we wanted this kind of philosophical thing. If Interreg should go this direction or rather that direction, or what do you think about it? So maybe if there are other voices, other concerns, please feel free.
maybe just while we're waiting for some more hands on the topic of indicators, then I think having the philosophy, like in my view, having the philosophy very clear in your mind will help you choose your indicators, because if your main goal is to deliver, then the indicators should be capturing how much you've delivered. But if your main goal is piloting, then it's a very unhelpful representation of, you remember going back to project A and B. So if the indicator of that project was the number of cubic liters, then that is only capturing the side effects of the project. It's not capturing what the actual intention of the project was trying to do. So that would, it's not really a level playing field if you are comparing project A and B purely on the basis of the number of cubic liters of water they have polluted, because obviously project A will seem to be a lot more impactful because that's not actually the main intention of project B. So yeah, I think if you're very clear that project philosophy, the piloting philosophy is what you're aiming for with a particular call or particular measure, as they will be in the next programming period, then you should also think about which indicators will help you to capture what you consider to be the true value of the projects.
Mm-hmm. We have another hand raised. Kelly, if you can.
Yes, so I'll probably find this out in my prep for next week, but I know in the current program there are common indicators around pilot actions being developed and jointly implemented. Is that something that we're seeing here in 2028 indicators as well, that would reflect this kind of pilot philosophy while still being able to have indicators that maybe aren't so directly linked to an intervention?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. Yeah, so yes, there is an indicator related to that is about pilot actions in the Annex 1 for the next programming period. So I think when Jon was saying that we're definitely not trying to say that piloting will not be possible in the next programming period, the fact that there is this indicator, and I think also the fact that it's okay, we've said that we weren't going to go into too much detail on P-BA, but the fact that the final target is an output indicator, and the fact that pilots is listed among the output indicators in Annex 1, this will make it easier for well, we see this as making it easier for piloting philosophy to be continued. But we are still aware, or at least we still, our hypothesis is that there will also be these forces that will be encouraging programs to try to know as much about their projects in advance as possible for the costing of the measure when they're setting the targets, which may encourage programs to specify their projects, and that may limit the project's flexibility to come up with the solutions that they consider to be the most appropriate for their program area, and to really allow that experimentation culture to thrive in the program area.
Greg?
Just to complement shortly what Phil was saying, that's as you said, actually, I don't want to spend too much time on the P-BA here, but this is exactly, I mean, I think that also one of the questions actually also Phil in his intervention mentioned before was this kind of how programs are kind of ready to accommodate risk, and also how they are ready to also accommodate failure. So something maybe for at least maybe this is not present in our Interreg reality. It's more like that actually you can find in like regional and national programs also financing the interventions through like financing instruments. But actually I mean simply also the failure is okay, as long as actually also Phil mentioned you are learning from this. So this is I think this is the key factor, and then just to put it in more like in a kind of the reality, how much of like I don't know a budget could be like also dedicated to failure and this kind of the learning point, and how much of this also I don't know indicators could be dedicated to this, or the other way around, as Phil also just mentioned, how to really embrace this in the calculation of the costing of the payout values. But that's maybe something that we are also discussing in other webinars.
These are next
Over
steps.
to you,
These
Sarah.
are next steps.
Yeah.
Yes, Sarah, if you can unmute yourself and.
Yes, and I think that's a good set-off point for what I was going to say. I think this has been really interesting to listen to the thinking behind it, the broader way of looking at this whole issue. It's not just about trying to figure out how to put the numbers in the table that we have to for the Interreg plan chapter. But I'm just thinking one obvious point here is that while the program might really want to pilot, and I would, on behalf of the program I work for, the North Sea program, piloting is the core of what we do. I don't anticipate that will change in the next period. And also we are being encouraged to use the output indicators that are in 142, I believe it is in the annex, which includes piloting. So I don't see that our program would make a huge shift to something else. But I'm just looking at the numbers for this program period we have, because we will have our monitoring committee and task force meetings next week. So we're preparing for that. And the target we have for the program target we have for piloting in our program is 1008. And the project application targets are 629. So the project's estimated, I guess, or we overestimated at program level what the target would be. And I would anticipate that we will be very conservative in the next period to make sure that we meet whatever target it is in order to be able to to make this work for us, the P-BA philosophy. So I'm very curious how this will work, and it will be part of our discussions, I'm sure, next week and going forward. There's also the subject of what are the other outputs we would use that are not about the piloting. So for example, the strategies and action plans, which is what we've also chosen. And that hasn't been part of this discussion, but I'm curious how that will also play out. Thank you.
So it would be really interesting, Sarah, probably in another forum from this call, but to find out whether you have investigated why there was this mismatch between what you estimated as the target and what the projects said that they would deliver. Whether it is similar to what Jon and I and Robert were thinking, is that just the budget of a pilot can be really small, it can be really big, and you don't want, if you're really focusing on it from a piloting perspective, you don't want to specify too much because this will limit the freedom for experimentation, and that means that there is this inherent possibility for you set a target, which is one thing, and then the projects offer you something very different. And I think Jon's point is really important. Like we're kind of hopeful and confident that this can be managed, but it just needs us to put our thinking caps on, at least the people who are interested in continuing this piloting philosophy in the next programming period. Maybe just one other thing to when you said, Sarah, that I think you started off by saying that there were, you yourself, when you were thinking that other programs, there would be lots of us who would be interested in continuing this piloting, but well, maybe I made a mental connection in my head that you didn't make yourself. But I think how can we continue to make the case for this? And I personally feel that this the communication of piloting is really crucial, and precisely because it's not something that all programs do. It's not even something that some programs, that's all they do. It's in there, but how can we say that it is okay, maybe a small thing, but it is something that is crucial to what Interreg does, and therefore kind of special steps need to be put in place in order to kind of preserve it, if that's something that programs want.
Yeah, I think like for me, I think it's important that we, at least those who are interested, we come to some sort of like in terms of communication. I think this is, as you alluded to, Phil, and you already mentioned, the communication aspect of piloting is really much trickier than the delivery aspect. But at the same time, I believe that Interreg's sort of a part of Interreg's sort of niche in the sort of broader scheme of things is this it's cooperation, right? So this is what makes us special, and cooperation brings a lot of intangible benefits. For example, knowledge sharing and sharing across borders. Rather, like there's the horizontal and the vertical aspect, which I think is crucial. And I think we need to, if you want to differentiate ourselves from the mainstream or the national programs and so on, we need a story which sort of makes us special. If we're doing only the same things, but with a smaller budget and more complexity, then I think, what's even, it could be dangerous in the long term. Robert?
Just also to complement on that, what probably you noticed, because we mentioned actually two of those elements or those. On one hand, we are competing with Horizon programs, this typical university-driven, theory-driven programs. On the other hand, we have mainstream programs which are delivering, which are making, hard infrastructure, big indicators, big, deliver. And we as Interreg, that was our point of departure. We are somewhere in between. So we need to find also our niche, not to compete either with one or the other. And that is why we thought that maybe this piloting element, this is something where we can find our niche, using, as Jon said, this cooperation element as a huge leverage for that, and just to connect, maybe being like an intermediate between those two worlds. As I said, it's a philosophical discussion here. We will not give you any answer to that. It's more like you can take back home and think about it, on the broader perspective, who we are, how we would do, and so on. Because as Jon said, at some point, if we will go to one or the other direction, one might say and ask why Interreg is needed at all. What is the added value? And then consequences might be as not so promising to us. Let's put it like this. Any thoughts? Any comments on that? As I said, it's an open discussion. So if you have. I cannot see any more raised hands. So how we are going to, do we have the final?
So should we put the
poll? Yes.
That's the
final poll?
Sorry, I need to find it. Yeah. This is the one about, yes. Sorry, we're talking about the Interact one. Trying to open it again. So I already opened it prematurely. Okay. Now it's open again.
And Jon, Robert, and I won't vote in this.
No.
Yes, because the question for you is actually, do you want us in our Interact work that we should see and a bit more invest in this aspect? Do you see this useful for our work, or we simply should disregard it and everyone does whatever, no more discussion on that, and so on? So the question actually is if you want us to invest our time and effort in this aspect, or rather not. Can't see the results if I will not vote.
Yeah, just go to the chat, Robert.
Okay, so in the chat you said. Okay. So 50 questions. Okay. No, 50 answers, sorry. No one said no. That's interesting one. By the way, before, when we organized this event, or we tried to develop, we thought also this as a pilot. And you know what is the biggest beauty about it? The biggest beauty about perceive this as a pilot was we would never fail in our understanding, because if the outcome of this event was that please don't do anything, please don't work on that, we would simply say, okay, pilot fail, we will not work on it, that's our lesson learned, we will never say any word about it, it's a success. But you said, okay, work on it more, then we take this also as a success. So in both cases, we are happy with the outcome of this meeting. So that's the biggest beauty, of the pilot if you think, you know, from the pilot philosophy point of view, to that.
And that maybe, Desi, please.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, Robert, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just wanted really to share my idea how you could approach this. You bring this topic further in the next program period, because in my understanding, your general perception of piloting is excellent, but is not properly incorporated in the definitions of the indicators that we need to work with. So there's really two separate understandings of how we could really work on piloting. But I could give you an example really how to integrate both understandings, because the indicators and the perception of piloting that is now incorporated in our indicators, it's a more practical, on a more practical level, and it doesn't go that deep, that further. But I would just like to share an example from our experience. So within the Bulgaria-Serbia program, there is currently a project that is an indirect support. So it's about to provide indirect support to 200 enterprises from both sides of the border. And within this huge project, there are 4 pilots determined. For instance, the lead partner of this project will, together with the project partners of COL, will try to find and identify 4 pairs of enterprises, one Bulgarian, one Serbian enterprises, and they're not going to subgrant money to these 4 pairs, money of the project, but they will really facilitate these 4 pairs to reach this technology readiness level 7 out of 9. Perhaps you know that concept of the TRL. So it's really a huge piloting experience that is completely unknown for anyone, but they're really eager to experiment something so bravely. So if we all together try really to work in a non-traditional way within a more traditional environment, could be really a way to go further. So I just wanted to share our example, how we're really approaching this piloting. We're just experimenting the pilots, the really good pilots, within a traditional regular project.
Yeah, thank you, Desi. So what you've said has triggered lots of different thoughts, but I will try to keep it brief because we did say we would finish it at 10:30. So no, we have done a lot of talking, so it's really nice to hear from you, Desi. So first of all, you mentioned about indicators. So what we will be doing in all of the themes working under P-BA is we will pass on to them the findings of this webinar, and we will say to them that quite clear, 80% of the participants of this meeting, 40 people, they have said that they want Interact to take into account this wish to continue piloting in the next programming period. And we will ask the coordinators in Interact to ensure that in all of those groups, so whether that's from a cash flow perspective, from interconnection of upper lower level perspective, in all of those perspectives, that they will also look for solutions to say, okay, well, does what we are looking at, does that also work for projects that work in a piloting approach? And as you know, because you were a member of the indicators, you attend the indicators event, we will also pass this on to the people in Interact working on indicators who are actually on this call at the moment. And so when we're thinking about what are the indicators in Annex 1? Are there anything missing that we would like to suggest to the Commission to include to help us to make sure that we're really capturing the benefits of piloting? So that's what we will be doing in general with the results of this webinar and specifically for indicators. And then just moving on to your second point, Desi. So I think we will go away and we will think ourselves about kind of what we have learned from presenting our case to you. And I think already I'm thinking that trying to gather together examples of the piloting approach in different programs, different types of programs, CBC, transnational, external borders, and so on. I think this also could help to give greater visibility to this aspect of Interreg, which I think could also help with this communication aspect, which Jan and Robert had mentioned. So yeah, I will stop here, but yeah, I guess that gives you a bit of a sign of what our intentions are with the results of this meeting.
Thank you very much, Phil. I think we are slightly later, but I think if there are no more further question or comment, I think we can call the day with this one. So thank you very much. I hope it was inspiring. As I said, we didn't want to convince you or we didn't want to make you think that this is something. We wanted to make a bit of philosophical discussions with you, which I think we made it. We wanted to inspire you a bit, think differently. I hope you will have another minute later on to think about it, and then we are also taking back home that we will work further on that, and as Phil mentioned, we will try to propose some other maybe work related. So thank you very much for that. Yes, and we see each other at some other meetings, events, everywhere. So have a good day and bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.